Hello and welcome to Bottom Line as we continue our journey and conversations with business leaders across the country. My guest for today is HDFC Bank Managing Director Aditya Puri. We're speaking to him at its headquarters in central Mumbai. Mr. Puri, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
So 2012 has ended, the calendar year at least, and 2013 calendar has begun. How are things looking?
Well, it could be better, but I have to say that in our own assessment, we think next year is going to be better than this year. And that assessment is based upon the fact the actions that have been taken and the statements that have been made. So we internally are looking...
You mean government?
Government. We are looking at about a GDP growth rate of 6% plus. And then if the right actions continue, the 7% plus trajectory after that.
So what's happened in the last couple of years? We've had a slowdown. We are now coming out of it, and you're looking at the future somewhat optimistically. And yet the system has taken, I mean the banking system has taken quite a hit, or at least a hit, while you may specifically have been insulated by it. How do you see this whole period?
See, I think, has the banking system taken a hit? Yes. Is it a cause for alarm? In my view, no. Because if you see, most of the restructured loans are actually not the fault of the bankers. That is something that we need to fix in the overall system. Do we need power? I think nobody can dispute the fact that we need power. Even if the power plants that have not started functioning import coal, they will make money at 5 rupees a unit. At least 25 to 30% of power in the country is still supplied by diesel generating sets, and there's a shortage of power. So these units must be made functional. It was very difficult for anybody to imagine that the last mile on roads would not happen, or you would have other mining issues in terms of what projects that have been sanctioned. So I do believe that yes, temporarily we have seen an increase in restructured loans, but these loans are not likely to go bad. And for the sake of the country as a whole, we better fix the problems, and the bank's problems will automatically be fixed.
So what's your own exposure to this space, the stressed space? I know it's not much, but what is it?
I'd say peanuts.
Okay.
Not worth mentioning.
So you're saying at a country level, India needs this, right? And you argued quite well for this. But at a bank level, you're obviously averse, and for maybe valid reasons, because you've got your depositors' money to think about.
Yeah.
Now, I hear this from some of your colleagues in the industry as well. Now, how is this going to improve or change things when it comes to fundamental GDP growth then, which in turn will affect the fortunes on a longer term of the banking sector?
If you get more power, by definition, the cost for industry goes down and you can produce more. If you get the last mile of the road, you've connected one more village.
No, I get that. The question is, if funding is going to be a constraint for infrastructure projects, for the reasons that you outlined, how will then GDP growth come back? Because you're yourself saying 6% plus and then more.
But this should be fixed. I mean, what is the issue? What is difficult in fixing interdepartmental issues? You either have environment clearance or you don't have environment clearance. This is not an atomic bomb. The rest of the world also does this. And what is the problem with mining? The whole world does mining. So there must be a proper way to do mining. So going forward, what our hope is that these issues and impediments which should have not come about will be fixed.
Let me ask the question differently. The country needs infrastructure. The people who are getting into that space perhaps do not have the experience, and which is why you're not giving them the loans. There are banks like you who have the ability to assess good quality loans or good quality founders or promoters. And yet the mix is obviously not the right one, because of which we have the systemic problem that we've seen in the last few years. So how do we...
See, Govind, the point is that if you get the right regulatory environment, then funding is the least of the problems. The problem is getting the right regulatory environment where the bank has visibility in terms of when the project will be operational to generate cash flows to repay him back. So all we're saying is that we are not unique in the world. Everybody mines. Everybody has environmental issues. And yet they create enough power. Everybody, or large portions of the population, have to help the downtrodden. But we get the money to them. And where middle class subsidies have to go, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money.
So the bottom line question is, what are the systemic issues that need to be addressed then, so that the banking sector can become more safer than what it is currently?
See, I think, firstly, the banking sector in India is very safe.
Yeah, safer. That's why I said safer. I didn't say unsafe to safe. Yeah.
I'm a careful fellow, so I'm just reiterating so that we are on the same page. So, for safer, what the issues are, firstly, project approvals. You can't have 45, 50 different approvals and all the time the project being held hostage. Clear understanding of what is our environmental policy. Clear understanding on land acquisition. Fundamentally, making business not subject to the discretionary or lack of certainty. So if you don't have certainty, money is it's like a pretty woman, yeah? It's very fickle. If it sees uncertainty, it runs away.
Okay. So let me sort of park this aside for a moment and let's look at what's been working on the ground, or more specifically on the retail and consumer side. The consumer has continued to consume in these 3 years, and I guess that's what shows while HDFC Bank has been grabbing market share, but also things have been going strong. So what explains that?
See, if you look at it two ways, and you're absolutely right, when you see the GDP slow down, the consumption dynamic has maintained itself. The delta on the GDP is the investment. If the investment comes, there's no reason why we shouldn't be growing at 7% plus. If you look on the consumption side, we are more like a developed economy in terms of our GDP, almost 58% is consumption. So we are still growing at 5%, and we are also having a situation where a large portion of the rural population is being uplifted. A combination of these two has kept the consumption dynamic going. But if you wanted to carry on incrementally, you will have to get the investment.
And interest rates, I guess, are the next factor which affect both the power and the large projects that we spoke of, as well as at the bottom end of the consumption cycle. So you've been arguing for lower interest rates. The RBI is holding on, citing inflation as a key concern. Where do you see things today as we step into the new year, as it were?
See, this is a very tough one. Obviously, you need to balance inflation and growth. And initially, if you don't control inflation, you have an issue. But, and I have been along those lines always saying, yes, inflation has to be controlled first. But obviously, each medicine has a timeline. So if an antibiotic doesn't work, you have to change it. Today is a classic scenario where you have declining industrial production, you have declining top-line inflation, you have declining core inflation, you have no doubt high consumer inflation, which is a supply side issue, and you have some shortage of money supply. In this situation, I think in this dynamic, growth seems to get a little heavier.
Okay.
And that is what we are saying, at least our recommendation, and then it's a tough one, it's for the Reserve Bank to decide, that we would like to see maybe a 50 basis point cut in repo and 75 to 100 basis point cut in CRR. It would now not only change the sentiment, it will bring down interest rates because then there will be transmission, and it gives a fillip to consumer demand. It also stops people from thinking that interest rates will fall further, and they will probably go ahead.
Right. So, there are two situations. I think one is, let's say, the interest rate problem as you face and maybe consumers face. Now, there's a supply side, right? So, we've got a budget coming up. What is it that the government could potentially do or should do which can address this situation, at least from the factors that they have in their control, minus the Reserve Bank?
I think the finance minister has been specifying reasonably clearly. We should all take very clear heart from the fact that everybody has recognized that the fiscal deficit must be brought under control. Not only brought under control, it must decline till it reaches that 3% odd. I think he's made a very clear statement that fiscal deficit will not exceed the 5.3. They're also taking actions to ensure that the main component in that is subsidy. That whereas we do not do away with subsidy, but it reaches the right people, and you don't have subsidies which are non-merit subsidies, which are subsidies to the middle class.
Yeah.
Those have to be removed. So if he can control his deficit, if he can put in what he has said, like what he wanted a national investment board, so that if there's a project, let's look at it systematically and see what needs to be done to get it going, because this is not rocket science.
Yeah.
So the National Investment Board the fact that he wants to maintain the fiscal deficit under control and has shown actions on that front, accountability of people in terms of expenditure incurred and results, I think if we can achieve this, you will see a downward trend. I mean, the Reserve Bank has also been saying that control your fiscal deficit, and I'll have more leeway on monetary policy. What we also have to understand is nobody denies that financial inclusion is a political, economic and social necessity. But for Christ's sake, get the money to the right people. And if you can't get it, until you can't get it there, it may be a fair idea to say, hold on. And globally, if you look at Greece, if you look at Spain, anywhere, you cannot finance, deal with poverty or the underprivileged on government borrowing.
Right. So that's an important lesson. And I'm also going to ask you a little more about HDFC Bank's own efforts to improve or serve the financially non-included. Yes. But we'll do that after a break. Stay with us. You're watching Bottom Line. Welcome back. You're watching Bottom Line. My guest, Aditya Puri, Managing Director of HDFC Bank. Mr. Puri, before we come back, I was going to ask you about the rural push and the financially non-included segment of the population. Most people are impressed with HDFC Bank's ability to keep its NPAs low and, of course, its growth high. Can I ask you that question again? What's the formula here?
No, the formula is quite simple. What we have said is we have defined our target market. And since demand exceeds supply in this country, we have not felt the need to either go down the risk ladder or reduce our pricing and our margin to take care of defaults. So as long as you have a clear target market, as long as you test that target market, you establish the probability of default and you carry on monitoring it, there is no reason why your default rate should go much higher than what you have predicted.
Right. And when you say demand is more than supply, would you mean across segments of consumption? Or?
Largely.
Okay.
Largely.
So why is it that in some areas where there seems to be a surfeit of banks offering services, and despite that you still say that there's more demand?
No, you see,
particularly say the higher net worth individual level,
so
corporate.
I'm talking about total demand in the country.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is 60 to 70% of your people still live in semi-urban and rural areas. When we did our study of the semi-urban and rural areas, we found that it was almost a virgin market. Just to amplify on that, if you look at it, how many banks are doing two-wheeler loans, loans against jewelry, credit cards in the interior, personal loans in the interior, loans to small shopkeepers, Kisan Gold cards, crop loans. It's phenomenal. It's an opportunity that exists. To access it, you have to change your system and you have to have an understanding of the different operation procedure required, the credit, the marketing, the sales. But we've been doing this for about 4 years now, and our growth there is absolutely phenomenal. Our experience has been good, and we have most of the people are quite happy when they deal with us. So we are establishing a rural brand which we think will be second to none. And it's a population, as you get more and more infrastructure going in there, will have an increase in their affluence.
So you've talked about 1 million people being helped or brought above poverty line thanks to HDFC's lending to those sections, and I think you've set a target of 10 million for the next 3 years. Is this something you're doing because of compulsion, or is it a business opportunity in that sense?
I wouldn't really describe it as a business opportunity. In the long run, I think it will be a business opportunity. There is no compulsion also. What we do believe is that if you want to be in this country, you do owe an obligation to society as well. So when we say we are lending, no, we're not just lending. Here we provide a holistic service to the customer. We help him with his market linkages, we help him with his training, we help him with his administration, we help him with sourcing his material, we disburse the loan to wherever he is, we set up a collection mechanism. So these are people who we create the sustainable livelihood for. We make them viable. And that's the most important, because just giving them a loan doesn't help and just giving them subsidy doesn't help.
And this is also quite a departure from what HDFC Bank was a few years ago.
HDFC Bank a few years ago was a small bank.
Okay.
With not that much influence on society. So that is one aspect. So when you say what are we doing there, so this is right at the bottom of the pyramid. Then we go to the next level, where a large proportion of the lower middle class actually buys gold. And if he goes to a pawnbroker, that's the end of his gold. So we provide loans against gold at a very reasonable price. We put his gold in an envelope, and he comes back and gets his gold. So that's the other where we're substituting the money lender. We've gone into the interiors. So if you see motorcycles, if you see a small shopkeeper can't get a loan, but if he comes to us, he can. So motorcycles, we've gone in with credit cards. We've got small ticket personal loans. We help him with his warehouse receipts. We help him. We're trying to create the supply chain between the farmer, the Artiya, and the government. And we've done this in Punjab in Pangrain project, where basically when the farmer comes, he gets his money on the spot. Everything other than the sustainable livelihood is a business.
Right. So,
sustainable livelihood in 10 years
yeah.
will become a very valuable business, because then we'll be making money. At this point of time, we're taking major losses, but we think this is something that gives all of us in the bank a lot of satisfaction. The board is committed. I am personally committed, because my daughter one day said, yeah, I know, you're a good banker, you make some money, but what are you really doing for the country? And I said, look, if she can have so much consciousness, I better have a little more.
So I should be interviewing her as well.
Well, for sure.
So, you were speaking at the Vibrant Gujarat Summit, and you talked about an HDFC Bank branch every 8 kilometers. And you also talked about the electricity penetration and the road penetration. So to what extent, and this is a larger question really, I mean, we've talked about the bank, we've talked about the systemic challenges and the interest rate. To what extent is the banking sector's growth or real growth dependent on other things or external factors, or maybe not so external factors such as this? And how should maybe greater attention be focused on these areas?
Govind, that's a great question, right? Touches right along my alley. The fact of the matter is, the banks follow the real economy. So when you have a road and power going to a village, you change that village. He's now in touch with the rest of the world. He can sell his milk, he can sell his vegetables, he can have light, he can be educated. And then he becomes viable for the banks. Banks fundamentally are in the business of giving loans, but our product, unfortunately, we want back after we've improved your standard of living. So unless we develop the interior, and 60-70% of our population lives there, then there will be a limit to which the bank can grow. So if you look at it, if we go in and put money for infrastructure, and there's viability to the projects, which there will be because the demand is there, if you go in and see that you create the right agriculture chain and you bring in agriculture reforms, if you, with that money that you put in infrastructure, you take light, electricity, road, water to the interior, the banks are going to be booming for the next 50 years here. Because you're creating viability, you're creating more affluence, you're creating a need. And of course it'll have an effect on your GDP. And if you don't this, I'm worried, you won't have democracy in this country after another 15 years.
How could things change? Can a lot of this change in the next 6 months to a year?
I think so. I think it can change with the right budget. I think if what Mr. Chidambaram is saying in terms of making project approval and implementation more transparent and clearer, with the coordination body, having a clear policy on mines, roads, power, etc., I think this can change very rapidly.
But on the other hand, do you think the banking system today is being more cautious or being forced to be more cautious than necessary?
I don't think the banking system is being more cautious. There's an old English saying, once bitten, twice shy. So if you don't have raw material, we won't finance you.
Right.
And if you don't give us your last mile, then it will be foolhardy for the bank to go in for financing of that road project. So if you're saying it's going to be, I wouldn't say they're being more conservative than necessary. They're just demanding that we need to see visibility if we are to lend.
But the central bank is also asking you to increase your risk weightage. So
Oh,
in a
that's
sense,
a-
yeah. So the system is becoming more cautious, isn't it?
That's a completely different thing. I think I'd written on that. Basically, are the Reserve Bank's prescriptions for risk weight and capital under the Basel III norms are tighter than the international standards. Given that we didn't have a problem related to subprime assets and derivatives and market risk, I would say that I think we should be lower than Basel III. Forget being higher than that. If you raise your risk weight and you raise your capital requirement, then what happens is that the return on equity for the bank goes down. We must understand in India, as long as the fiscal deficit is there, it's going to take a little longer for the debt market to develop. We don't have a developed venture capital. We have limitations on how much foreign money can come in. So the banking system is going to be the main intermediary of funds. So for that, whether it's to fund infrastructure, whether it's for financial inclusion, whether it's working capital, it's a hell of a lot of money that the banks require. For that, they will need to raise capital. And I'm saying all we need to examine is if we need to raise capital, let's not bring the return on equity down for the banks because then they will have difficulty.
And last question, I mean, do you think Indian banks or banks in India need to be given more freedom to bring in more products, particularly of the exotic variety?
I don't think banks in India are constrained in terms of bringing in products. The exotic variety products have a automatic kicker in the arse along with them. What happens is when the going is good, then every customer understands the exotic product. When he starts to lose money, then the banks have misled him. So I think banks would be well advised not to be too exotic, follow the real economy and meet the needs of customers. I think the exotic product phase is over. The regulation, the way it's going, it was actually accumulation of everybody. It was the regulator and the government and the banks and the individuals.
Yeah.
You know, I won't take one of the most prominent people in this country asked me, you know, why did banks mislead? And I said, you know, my friend, if the whole banking system is offering you 5% and a product is offering me 15%, I would mention that your greed had something to do with it as well.
And that's a very apt way to end, I think, today. I think greed is the most important aspect the banking system needs to look at and factor in while it gives out loans and, of course, keeps depositors' money safe.
By and large, we are all right. So Indian bankers have been good, safe and underpaid.
Mr. Puri, thank you very much for speaking with us. Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of Bottom Line. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week, same time.